Welcome to our podcast, She's Bridging the Gap, where we're on a mission to bridge the gap through conversations that inspire change and build lives, businesses, and healthier minds. I'm Sam D, and I'm a certified nutrition coach and personal trainer.
I'm Hannah Harvey, and I'm a business coach and strategist.
And I'm Kendra Garrett, a mindset and accountability coach. In this podcast, we're going to bring you the tools you need to bridge the gap between your health, wealth, and relationships. Welcome back to another episode of She's Bridging the Gap. We are here with the amazing Emily Long, a mindset and performance coach, and she is just going to come on and tell us a little bit about herself and share about her journey. And we will just take all the golden nuggets from you that you want to give to us. So Emily, I will hand it over to you to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely like 7 different versions of that story. I could give you the really short one. I could give you the really long one, but we'll sit it in the middle, and then you guys let me know what questions you have. But the long story short, my husband and I started in a business a little over 15 years ago. We got married and then started a business, which, I just don't recommend it for most people. Thank God it worked out for us. We were very young too. But our first business was our first baby, and we poured everything into it, and it blew up. It was a gym here locally, and it exploded. My husband is like the strategy on the back end. I'm like the bubbly face that just made it fun, and it blew up. So we kind of hit the ground running in the entrepreneurial world, which was a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing because obviously we were newly married, and all of a sudden we had all of this success, and it was fun, and we loved it. And it was a curse because we kind of thought that maybe we had, not that we would have said this. I don't know that we logically thought this, but in hindsight, I can see that maybe we thought we had a little bit of the Midas touch, right? So we started another business. That one took off as well. It worked really well with the gym. And so now we have these 2 businesses. They're crushing it. We're just like, clearly everything we do is just going to be amazing. So from there, I'm just going to be real because a lot of people struggle with this. From there, we ended up, we got a taste of freedom. So we were able to, without going into the details, streamline that business. We ended up, being able to just work like 6 to 10 hours while that business was crushing it, both of them. And, but then things would happen, right? We had about 12 employees. And when you have people problems. We weren't quite developed enough to deal with some of those things. So we were learning as we went. And we got to a point where we were like, this is a lot of moving parts. We kind of want something a little something that's not going to pull us back in, every year when we lose, an employee or something like that. So we ended up selling that business. We opened a smaller gym, and that helped us transition to online, where we thought, we did this. Clearly, like, this is just going to blow up like everything else we've ever done has. But it didn't. And we learned, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Pride Cycle, but, Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels talks about the Pride Cycle. Like, every entrepreneur has to go through the Pride Cycle. We unfortunately had to go through it quite a few times. So we went through it a few times, learned a lot of things the hard way, humbled the heck out of us, and finally got us to a place where we were doing the right things for the right reasons and finally beginning to see traction again. So that's kind of what led us to where we are today. So like I said, I started in fitness. Now it's mindset and performance. And what earned me the right to speak on those things are those years of pain and frustration and debt and brokenness and feeling like those maybe were flukes and maybe we didn't really have what it takes, but having to muscle mentally through those hard things. And, Kendra knows, along with a lot of personal life things going on, but that's what brought us to where we are in terms of business today. And I love what I get to do because I can speak from a place of, no, really, I've been there. Listen, this is how it is, and it's just really cool.
If you are willing, by all means, tell me to touch on personal things that have gone into, because I know that those generally go hand in hand with business and the direction that you go and things like that. So if you wanted to share anything about personal journey as well, and how it also affected your business and lifestyle there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So to hit on the personal side, when we first started, before we hit record, Kendra had, mentioned what titles I go by. And there's so many, and any mama who has a business understands this because I'm a homeschool mom. We were at a time a foster mom. Now we're adoptive parents. We have a son. We, all of the things. So during this whole crazy journey of entrepreneurship, we also had a life, and we were trying to navigate being newlyweds. And then we had our son, and, we had this thriving business, but then I had this son. So we had I had all of the mom guilt of feeling like I should be working when I was with him and feeling like I should be with him when I was working. So I had to navigate through that, not very well, honestly, at the beginning. And then I went through a long period of infertility, and this kind of happened during the time that that we sold our business, we were switching into other things. So it really felt like, the crap hit the fan in many ways, because now we didn't have like the security and the safety and the financial security that we'd had for so long. And I'm feeling like a failure in every way because, I'm getting pregnant. I was having recurrent miscarriages, then struggling for long periods of time to get pregnant. I wanted so badly to have more babies. There was no explanation. So it was just this long, like 6-year period of striving in every way, striving physically, striving personally. And then of course our marriage struggled as a result too. So now we had our son who's growing up quickly and all of these other things going on, which really all do feed off of each other. And I think, one thing I'll just say on that is, in the entrepreneurial world, we often have a tendency to just look to like, okay, this person's having success in this area, I'm just going to listen to them. But we forget to consider all of the areas of their life. Because if they are, let's say, a single 21-year-old guy, and you're a mom of 3 like I am right now, and you're trying to pattern your life after their success, you are going to crash and burn. You're going to implode. Either your business is going to implode, or your family life, or your relationships. It's just not possible. And so that was a big important thing I learned, because I kept trying to piece things together, like take advice from this person who did not have the family or the faith values I had. And then, this parenting advice from someone who was like a stay-at-home mom who didn't understand, exactly the things I was dealing with. And none of it worked. So that was a huge lesson I learned through that, is finding people who had similar values, similar home life. It doesn't have to be exact, and the business that I wanted, and take advice from people like that.
I love that. And you actually touched on a word that we were talking about before we brought you on, of you were in a season of just like striving and striving and striving for everything. And from us outside looking in, it looks like you today are at a very content place in business and personal, and you're not necessarily in that strive, like get to the next, always have to be doing something. But you seem like you're very content in your life right now. Correct us if we're wrong, but kind of explain to us how that looks and how you got to that point of contentedness rather than constantly in like striving, grinding mode.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a journey. I always like to say that I have to learn things the hard way so that I can then teach people the easy way. And it was the hard way. And, it's funny, I was just looking at a post, even just it was about 1.5 years ago. And I remember posting it, and I remember what I was feeling that day. And it was just about, like, you don't have to have permission to whatever, do these things. I'm going to be making a post about it soon, so keep an eye out for it. But just reading it now, like reading it this week and seeing how far I've come, even just in the last 18 months, has been like, oh my gosh, like what you see is true, Kendra. I can honestly say that I'm at a point of contentedness. Am I making the most money I ever have in my business? No. But here's the difference. And there's so many ways I could go with this. And there's a lot more that I will be sharing online, because now I'm coming into a season of being ready to do a lot more than I have been doing. But there's a couple things. One is you have to know your values. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, yeah, like they're going to just roll that. They're going to ignore what I say, or they'll be like, I already know my values. But I can tell you, after working with so many entrepreneurs, so many women, they often don't really know their values. You may know a few, or they may be kind of like out there, like, oh, I don't lie, I'm an honest person, I'm a person of integrity. You may know things like that. But if you don't know your values, what you stand for and what you stand against, you are going to be influenced by every trend, every little sparkling light out there. So that is the first thing you have to know. Like now, when I hear a coach who I respect, even Lauren, let's say, we all love her. She's amazing. Maybe she's promoting some specific type of marketing. I can look at her knowing that I love and respect her, and still know that thing is not suitable for my life right now based on my values. And I'm talking about, values like honesty, integrity. I'm talking about time values, right? Freedom, things like that. When you get to a place where you know what you stand for and what you stand against, and you know, like what season of life you're in and what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice based on your goals, and making sure that all of those things meet up, right? Because like I always use the weight loss example. If someone's like, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds in the next let's say 6 months. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do you want? What are you willing to do that? And they're like, well, instead of having 4 bottles of Coke a day, I'm going to just have 3.5. Like those are not equal. You're not going to lose 100 pounds in 6 months just making that change, right? So a lot of times we have these values and these goals and these things, but they're not aligned. We want to make $100,000 this year, but we're only willing or able to spend 2 hours a day on our business, or we're only willing to do this type of business, right? So those things are not equal. And then we end up frustrating and not understanding why this person has success, but we don't. So that's a huge part. The second part, and they go hand in hand, is you have to have a firm backbone. So this is like knowing your values, but then knowing like having proof to back it up. And there's so many ways you can do this, like if you're talking to, again, a fitness example, or like a bookkeeper, let's say, and they know that they really are against using debt, whereas you have somebody else who's really for using debt for growing your business. You have to you have to know why. You have to have evidence to support it, and then you have to be willing to be polarizing. Not that you're going to go out necessarily and be super polarizing all the time, but if you don't have that standard for yourself, you're going to come across wishy-washy. You're going to come across like unsure, and it's just not. And you're going to feel that way inside, and I think that's the most important thing. Again, I could keep going on that, but I'll leave it at that. And if you guys have any clarifying questions, go for it.
That's so good. I just like everything you said resonated with me. And I think in the beginning of my business, I told Hannah and Kendra this in the past, but in the beginning of my business, the only thing I was focused on was making money. I was like, I'm going to make $100,000 a year. And I'm going to do it on my own. Like now I'm starting to regret doing that because I've built this business, and now it's morphed into, well, this isn't what I believe in anymore. I want to be able to I'm starting homeschool with my youngest next year. And I'm like, okay, now I need to readjust everything because my values are actually my family and having money to do the things that we want to do, but not necessarily be loaded with money. So I'm sort of in that transition period and trying to find that contentiveness.
Yes. And so, okay, 100% exactly where I was about a year and a half ago. And it's interesting, Sam, and all of you guys, because it's like the things that you're doing aren't bad. Like, it's not like you're out there doing bad things. And yet there is a value, like there are values that just should take more priority over other values. So is it like, I was just thinking about this today. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but in the moment, like it feels like you're doing something bad, even though you're not. It feels like it's bad.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's only because there's a misalignment in your values. Like here's an example is like, let's say lying is a huge value, or honesty is a huge value of yours. Like you're like, I do not lie. I tell the truth at all costs. Well, let me ask you something. If somebody came to your house and they wanted to take your kid away for some reason, or like if you had to lie to protect your child, would you do it? Yes, because there's a value hierarchy, right? Your child is always more important than that value of honesty. And that's what we forget. So that is so, so huge. And that's exactly where I was, Sam. I was homeschooling my oldest. My 2 youngest were actually still in daycare. And the word that kept coming to me, and it's a cliche word, but this is, again, you guys, those of you listening, like hang on to the most cliche things, because often those are the things you need to hear. The ones that you hear again and again and ignore are the things we need to internalize. But the word rest. And it was like, what does it even mean to work from rest? I don't even know what that looks like. Like I was the kid who had 4 jobs when I was 16. Like as soon as I could work, I was like, I'm very ambitious. So what does it even mean to rest? I learned that rest is not laziness. Rest is not doing nothing. If anything, I would say that I am more like industrious and effective and efficient today than I was when I was working a million hours a year and a half ago. Rest is, rather than not working or being lazy, true rest is doing what matters most based on your values and your backbone, because you have to have those figured out first. And it's doing it without anxiety, striving, and pressure. That's all it is. So I'm getting more done easily today with less pressure. And what you guys were, everybody has seen Encanto. I'm sure you've seen it, right? Yeah. Like the Luisa song, like we're all like, right? Like I was like bawling my eyes out when that movie came out. I'm like, this is me. And now today I'm like, this is not me anymore, because I don't work according to what other people are telling me to do. I don't have to hit 100K or 10K months or whatever the internet's goal is for me. Yeah. I only have to do what I want to do. And now I get to homeschool my 3 kids. And that is my number one job. I wake up in the morning and that is my focus. School is number one. Pouring into discipling my kids, raising them up to be good humans. That is my number one goal. And what overflows out of that, I get to serve women and I get to serve entrepreneurs. And it is a beautiful thing. I will say this real quick. I'm making it sound so romanticized and so awesome, but it was a painful journey to go from there to here, because it's a lot of stripping away before you get to add in. I had to get rid of identities. I had to get rid of habits. I had to get rid of what I thought I needed to be. I had to really like hold up the mirror and figure out what is my backbone. What do I stand for? What are my values? Values first, and then use those things to firm up my backbone. And then I had to walk in it regardless of what other people thought. And I can tell you, I've been a confidence coach for a long time, but my confidence has grown more in the last 12 months than in the last 15 years of business, because I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know what I stand against. And it genuinely doesn't matter to me what anybody else says or does. And that is freedom to me. That is true freedom.
Oh, I love that so much.
So good.
This is so, and like, I mean, Emily, you and I have worked together, so I know you've seen a lot of my journey in growing into that same type of things and focusing on my values. And I'm now able to teach others that as well through, like, I've got a few ladies in my program actually, and we literally, the first thing we do is focus on core values. So I'm able to not just see the transformation that I have done over the last year and a half as well, but also see the transformation and the struggles that other people may be slightly different than what I dealt with. But like you said, it's not an overnight thing. It is that we are working on it, but I can see those transformations and the joy and the freedom it's brought me, it's brought other people. Yeah. And it's just such an exciting thing to watch and be a part of, as long as you're staying true to yourself, even though our core values between all of us can differ, and that's totally okay.
Absolutely.
But as long as we are staying true to who we are and our own core values, like, then everything else will follow. And I think you touched on a big point, which Sam already said, it resonated with her too, of, oftentimes I think whenever we get into this entrepreneurship world, we're like, oh, we're going to make that 100K a year. Like, it is financial based. And I'm not saying money isn't important, because, we have to live and pay bills and things like that. But is that what's truly most important to us? Or is it family? Or is it faith? Or is it something totally, totally different of homeschooling? Like, what is that? Which money can be one of those values as well. But where does it rank in that value ladder to determine your next steps and where you're going? I think what you're saying, I know, has resonated with me, and it sounds like it can resonate with a lot of people. So I'm sure our listeners are getting a lot out of this.
Yeah. Like, if you've ever been in a place where you were like willing to, you guys are ambitious women, where you're like, I'm literally willing to do whatever it takes to hit this goal. Right. But then you realize, like, the amount of time, that I'm tempted to say I regret, but I don't, because it brought me to where I am today. But it's still painful to think about the time I sacrificed for my kids. You guys know, like, when you're going all in something and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, that carries over into your home, and then maybe you're shorter with them. And I think of those moments and I'm just like, oh my gosh, if I had to go through that to help other women avoid that, or learn today that it is just not worth it. Money, like, let me be the first to say, is amazing. And, I'm a Christian. I feel like there's a big taboo in the faith world related to money. Like, money is amazing. I have seen what it can do. And absolutely, I want a lot of money. Like, let me just be clear. I want to make a lot of money. I'm not afraid to say it. And my family is number one, and I will not earn it at their expense. I will find a way, keeping my values in order. And it is possible, but it's, again, once you have that like firmness of thought, it's so much easier to filter through the ads. Like, guys, how many ads do we get? You're scrolling through and you're like, oh my gosh, I can make sales in my sleep. Like, I want to sign up for this webinar. Right. But it's so much easier to be like, what is actually true? Like, what's true for me? What is, comparing it against your own values and being able to make smart choices rather than short-term, like 100K month or 10K months, even 5K months, whatever the goal is.
Yeah. I have a question.
Sure.
So for me, I think going into this, I didn't know what my values were. So my value to me, I thought, was money. Do you think that's common? Like, do you think a lot of women go into this and they're like, my value is money? And then they're like, oh, maybe it's not.
So what I would say is, I don't know that they would say so much of this is just, it's like, we don't know what we don't know. We don't at the start of our journey know that we should, like, I didn't know that I should stop and go, hold on, before I design this whole plan for my life, I should probably consider what are my real values so that I can measure again. You know, I just didn't know to do that. I had to hate my life in order to come back and be like, hold on, this isn't working. So I don't know that they're consciously thinking like money is my value. I think that they are feeling some level of pain in their lives. Maybe they're in a 9-to-5, maybe they, you know, whatever, their husband lost his job or something. There's some pain related to money and they're like, I need money. And so money's the goal. I don't know that it's the value as much as the goal. And I think that's how we all start. And again, like, money can still be the goal. You can still have the goal of earning a ton of money, go for that 7-figure business. But take a few minutes to ask yourself why. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I personally, in my business, I don't need to be making 7 figures a year to have the life that I want. I didn't realize that because I didn't take the time to figure it out. I had to stop and go, like, what do I even want? Like, what would actually make a difference for my family? What would it cost me in time and energy and all of those things in order to achieve this goal? What about this goal? And it's a little, at the beginning, you don't really know those things exactly. You kind of have to, like, you know, they say like a rocket ship heading to the moon has to course correct and redirect like constantly. You have to be willing to do that. It's never going to be a straight shot. And that should be one of our values, right? Like, always improving, constantly growing. But at the beginning, what you would do is you would just say, okay, what do I want to make? 6 figures. And then you do the 7-step why. You know, Kendra and I, we talked about this. There's some magical, I don't know what it is about asking why 7 times, but you would just say, okay, why do I want to earn that amount of money? Because I want to be able to do more things with my family. Okay, cool. Why is it important? And then you phrase it like this. Why is it important to me that I get to do these things with my family? And be specific. What are those things? Because, you know, when I was growing up, I didn't get to do things like that with my family. And I always wished I had, or something, or I want to give them experiences, whatever that reason is for you. Then you say, again, this is number 3. Why is it important to me that I give my kids those experiences? And you keep going. It may take a few more than 7. You want to make sure you're honest with yourself about the answers. Like, gut reaction is usually the right one. And when you get to that 7, maybe the 10th layer deep of why, you should feel emotional. It'll usually take you down to like your core why, which is going to be like the core of your values too. Like, so for me, it's always going to go down. It's always going to end up with faith because of what I believe is so much bigger than myself. And so literally everything I do is going to end up there. And when I start there and I surrender all of my thoughts and my desires and the things that I want, you know, for me, to God, and then from a place of rest, I can be like, it's like I hold it with open hands. You know what I mean? I don't go into a plan like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm like, okay, this is the plan. Let's take a few steps. Let's see where it takes us. But you have to go all the way back. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So I think asking why will help you discover at least the beginning of your values.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really awesome. So I'd love to ask you what advice you would give to someone who's maybe like crossing a bridge right now. They're walking along the bridge and they're wanting to get to a place, or maybe they're like really desiring to get to a place where they are feeling content in their life. Maybe they're feeling a little guilty about it because, you know, they've worked so hard just to like slow things down. But like, what advice would you give to that person as they are desiring more contentness in their life?
So, you know, depending on where they're at, I think the first thing that I would have them do is go back to what we just talked about. Like whatever they're doing, are they building a business or, you know, moving up the corporate ladder, whatever they're trying to do? Why are you doing that? What's the goal? And then take those 7 layers back to get to the core why. If I was working one-on-one with someone, I would help them get all the way down to that point. And then from there, we'd unpack what that looks like. Like, what does that even mean? Like for me, like if it's like living my life to honor God, what does that even mean? Because we use, this is something that's important, is we use these words that we all use, let's say brave or confidence, but we each mean something different. So really taking the time to unpack, like, what does it even mean to do those things? What does it mean to be confident or to feel more courageous? Confidence is a big reason why women are wanting to do these things. Like they want to, get more confident or feel more certainty in their lives or have a little more control over their finances. What does that even mean? And what does that look like for you? Unpacking that is the best first step. From there, there's a lot of different directions I think we could go based on, what they uncover. But once you know your why, and then from there, you can start to think of your rules. So a lot of times, we all have rules that we live by, rules related to money, rules related to relationships, rules related to how we raise our kids and things like that. An easier way to probably think about them is expectations. So I think the second thing I'd have them do is I'd have them list out, like, where do you feel guilt? Where do you feel unhappy? Where do you feel discontent? In which areas of life? And then on 3 separate sheets of paper, I would have them write down, what are your expectations for each of those areas? So like, what has to happen for you to be happy in your marriage? What has to happen for you to be happy in your business? What has to happen for you to be happy with how you are interacting with your kids? And you have to, those of you listening that are going to do this, like, you can't judge it when it comes out, right? Like, Kendra, I know I would say this to you, like, you just got to, whatever comes out, you got to write it down, because our temptation is to be like, whatever, you list something out and then your brain goes, yeah, but that's not realistic. But it came out. And so it's still there in your subconscious mind, and you're judging your life against it, whether you like it or not. So you just have to list out whatever comes to your mind. And then the next thing you do is you go, okay, which of these things are actually realistic? Like, if to have a great marriage, I have to go on 4 dates a week, like, I'm going to be unhappy every single week, right? Like, we're lucky if we get one a month at this season of life. So you have to look through all those expectations and then kind of decide which ones are realistic for the season of life that you're in, which ones are probably super unrealistic. And then you have a choice. So you've got your expectations and you have your reality. So you kind of look at I can see why I'm in so much pain here, because my expectations for this is here. My reality is here. Like, if I'm only going to be happy in my business, if I'm making 10K months, but I'm still brand new and I'm only making $500 a month, that means I have to be in pain until I get there. That's a horrible way to live our lives. We don't want to do that, right? So you have to either change your expectations or you have to change your reality. It's the only way to get out of suffering. And it seems oversimplified. But again, you look at your expectations, which ones are just unrealistic for your season of life, you modify those. And then also, you also have to hold up the mirror and say, which parts of my life am I slacking? A physical one is an easy one to talk about. Like, if our expectations to feel good in our own skin is to, work out 6 days a week and eat perfectly, it's probably unrealistic for 99.999% of us, right? So we have to adjust that a little bit. But then also, if our reality is we're eating out every single day and we're not moving our body and we're not really putting any effort in, then there's a level of change that we have to experience in our lives too, to match it, right? We can't just drop all of our expectations. So that would be the second thing I would challenge them to do, try to get those matched up, and then just pick 1 or 2 things to focus on, because it can feel like a lot. Like, what 1 or 2 things are the biggest dominoes in terms of your expectations and reality that you can focus on improving in small steps every single day.
Oh, I love that. I could just listen to you all day. And I love that point of that expectations and reality. Just kind of put it into a different new perspective for me as well right there. So I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap that up?
Was so good.
It was, I just love it. So Emily,
Awesome.
Is there a way that our listeners can get into contact with you, and we can drop it in the show notes to be able to follow along and see what all you've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, easiest way is just my personal Facebook page or my Instagram. That's pretty much all I'm doing right now in terms of showing up in content. So Instagram is where I hang out the most. But yeah, either one of those.
Well, I know a couple times throughout this episode, you said, watch my social media for things to come and stories to tell and things like that. So I'm on the edge of my seat, like, okay, I want to make sure I'm staying in tune with you. So we'll be sure to include those social media links in the show notes to be able to connect with Emily.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you. This was so great.
Absolutely.
You can find our podcast, She's Bridging the Gap, on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and on YouTube if you want to watch the live video chat.
You can subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss a single episode.
And we're so excited to start helping you build your bridge.